Let's talk about something we all do, but maybe don't think about enough: sleeping. We spend a third of our lives asleep. So, have you ever stopped and wondered, am I even doing it right? Is there a correct way to sleep? It sounds like a simple question, but trust me, the answer is anything but. You know, People have been trying to figure this out for a long, long time. Believe it or not, back in the 70s, this psychoanalyst, Samuel Dunkel, had a pretty wild theory. He thought your sleep position could totally reveal your personality. So if you slept on your back, the royal position, boom, you were self-confident. Curled up in a semi-fetal position, that meant you were well-adjusted and sensible. It's a pretty fun idea to think about, right? But as fun as all that personality stuff is, the real impact of how we sleep, well, it's not so much on our psyche, it's on our actual physical health. So let's put the pop psychology aside for a minute and ask the really important question. What's the best position for our bodies to be in when we're trying to get a good night's rest? Okay, so to really dig into this, we've got to get on the same page. You've probably heard all those creative names for sleep positions, right? The free faller, the soldier, the zombie. But for the experts, it's actually way simpler. They boil it all down to just a few main categories. And it's pretty fascinating to see how we settle into these positions. As kids, we're just all over the bed, right? But as adults, a really clear pattern starts to show up. As you can see here, most of us, we end up being side sleepers. Fewer people prefer sleeping on their backs, and way, way at the bottom, sleeping on your stomach. It's by far the least popular. So, you know what? Let's start right there. All right, let's tackle the least common one first: sleeping on your stomach, or what the pros call the prone position. So, why do so few of us actually sleep this way? Is there a reason it's so unpopular? Well, yeah, there's a really good reason for it. Of all the ways you can sleep, this is the one that most experts will tell you to avoid. The biggest problem is that it can flatten the natural curve of your spine. Plus, you have to turn your head to one side just to breathe, which you can imagine puts a ton of strain on your neck. And all of that can lead to waking up feeling, tense and stiff. So it sounds pretty open and shut, right? Stomach sleeping equals bad. Well, not so fast. There's actually a super interesting twist where this worst position suddenly becomes the best one. And this is where things get really nuanced. For people with certain respiratory conditions, sleeping on their stomach can be a total game changer. It actually allows the back of their lungs to open up and expand more easily, which can be absolutely critical for breathing. It's a perfect example of how there's no single rule for everyone. Okay, moving on, let's talk about sleeping on your back, also known as the supine position. Now this one's a real mixed bag. It's got some major pros, but also some equally major cons. Yeah, this position is a real double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be amazing for your spine, but on the other hand, it might make you an incredibly loud and maybe even unhealthy sleeper. Let's break that down a little. So, the biggest win here is all about alignment. When you lie on your back, your spine gets to rest in its natural, neutral curve. This can take a lot of pressure off your back and hips, which is why it's often recommended for people with lower back pain. And here's a little pro tip for you. Sticking a small pillow under your knees makes it even better. Okay, that all sounds fantastic. So, what's the catch? What could possibly be wrong with sleeping on your back? Well, the answer comes down to two things: gravity and your airway. So here's what happens. When you're on your back, gravity can cause your tongue and the soft tissues in your throat to kind of relax and collapse backward. This narrows the airway. So when you try to breathe, the air has to squeeze through that smaller space, which makes all those tissues vibrate. And that vibration, that's the sound of snoring. And for people with something serious like sleep apnea, this is even more of a problem because that airway can get blocked completely. And that brings us to our final category. And the one that, most experts will point to as the big winner, side sleeping. It really avoids a lot of the problems of the other two positions. But even here, there's a really cool little detail to uncover. You'd think sleeping on your side is just, sleeping on your side. Simple. But it turns out the science shows that which side you choose, left or right, can actually make a big difference depending on what's going on with your health. And the benefits get super specific here. For instance, if you're someone who deals with acid reflux or heartburn, studies show sleeping on your left side can bring some major relief. But on the flip side, for people with congestive heart failure, sleeping on their right side might actually ease some of the pressure on their chest. It's amazing how specific it can get. So, why the left side for heartburn? Well, it all comes down to simple anatomy. Your stomach is located mostly on the left side of your body. So when you lie on your left side, your stomach actually sits below your esophagus. Gravity then does the work for you, making it way harder for stomach acid to creep back up and cause that awful burning feeling. It's such a simple, elegant little hack. Okay, so we've run through the pros and cons of every position. We know stomach sleeping is usually a no-go, back sleeping is tricky, and side sleeping seems to be the fan favorite. But before we officially crown a winner, there's one more really crucial piece of the puzzle we need to look at. Because this whole idea of finding the single best position, well, it's based on the assumption that we can just pick one and stay there all night. But is that really how sleep works? The answer is a huge no. See that number? 20 to 30. That's about how many times most of us move, shift, and totally change positions every single night. And we usually don't even know we're doing it. And you might think, oh no, I'm a restless sleeper. But this isn't a problem. It's not a bug in your system. This movement is actually a feature. Your body is doing it on purpose. See, you have to think of this movement as your body's built-in overnight maintenance crew. It's shifting to relieve pressure on your joints. It's repositioning when something gets uncomfortable. It's doing all of this to prevent the kind of soreness or even injury you'd get from being locked in one position for 8 hours straight. And this brings us right to our final big takeaway. After looking at all of this, the only thing that's really clear is there is no single one-size-fits-all best position. It just doesn't exist. The right way for you to sleep depends completely on your body, your health, and what you need. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Maybe the question isn't, what's the best position? The real question is, what is your body telling you? Pay attention to how you feel when you wake up. Are you rested? Are you sore? Are you stiff? Your body already knows the answer. Your only job is to start listening.